I'm Praful Akali, founder and MD of Medulla Communications in Mumbai. In terms of the trend, I think globally what's been happening in the recent past is that there is a lot of distrust against the healthcare systems, and that is something that we're seeing across the world. And in India, for example, you would see that doctor bashing, the kind of government controls in the hospital space, all of these are just symptoms of the ailment. The actual ailment is that distrust. And now healthcare communication across the world is beginning to take cognizance of that distrust. And therefore you would see that the trends are really in terms of the communication being far more real, building trust, becoming more authentic in nature. The advertising is less about the product and what the product is doing for the people versus more about the actual problems of the people. It has a purpose to it. It connects with the people. These are the trends you've seen and will continue to see going forward. So I founded Medulla in 2008. By then I had basically worked with in consumer healthcare marketing with some of the biggest companies, last with Pfizer, and handling brands like Gelusil, Benadryl and the like. And I'd worked with the biggest advertising agencies, the healthcare arms of these advertising agencies, the pure independent healthcare advertising agencies. And I realized that none of them are really getting healthcare advertising. The advertising guys don't get what healthcare is. The healthcare guys don't get what advertising is. And that's when we decided to start Medulla. So Medulla is now the most awarded healthcare advertising agency across the world. At the Cannes Lions Health in 2016, we were the healthcare agency of the year globally. We've also been the only agency across the world to be in the top 3 agencies of the year for 3 years running at Cannes Lions Health. I would also say that Medulla has now started India off on the journey of becoming the leaders in global healthcare advertising. In fact, very interestingly, healthcare advertising is one of the few areas where we don't just as a country compete with people across the world, but we actually are among the best in the world, if not the best in the world. And Medulla has been a good part of that journey along with a lot of other Indian players. Essentially, medical advertising is all about integrating both of these. If you don't get the science and the strategy right, you will not be communicating what you want to say. And if you don't get the creativity right, you won't be saying it well, the how to say it piece. So it's not either or, you have to do both. Again, examples of this, we have a palliative care campaign called The Last Words. And where if you understand the industry, palliative care is basically end-of-life care. And what happens in that is that the medical system is so geared towards prolonging life that even when you are terminally ill, the medical system still puts you into an ICU and tries to prolong your life. But what they don't realize is that by putting you in an ICU, they keep you away from the family. And therefore, a lot of us would actually pass away without a family around us. And that is a very stark reality. We use that communication, that insight that came from our understanding of science to creatively show nurses talking about the last words of their patients that they had heard over time. And we told people at large that you need to be, the families need to be hearing these last words and not the nurses. And that was the way that we kind of demonstrated the power of palliative care in India. Healthcare advertising faces the same challenges that mainline advertising does, but 2 of these are pronounced, and that is resources and processes. Because healthcare advertising is a niche area, while it, like any other advertising, it needs monies, it needs efforts to make sure that a lot of people see it. But it's tougher to find those resources. And the clients that do have these resources tend to have very stringent processes in place as well. And at Medulla, we've realized that twin conundrum. If you have resources, the processes come along with that. So you have to work within that. How do we manage that? The way we do it is we ensure that these processes are never inward looking. And they tend to get that way. We always keep our eye on the consumer. We always give the consumer a seat in every discussion that we're having, at least virtually. We always ask ourselves, what will the consumer be thinking about this? And that makes sure we never lose the bigger picture, we never lose sight of the consumer in the rigmarole of these resources and processes, and we get it right every time. Digital and social media, you're right, play a very interesting role in healthcare. The very first thing that social media has done is that it includes the consumer in the marketing conversations. अगर और कुछ नहीं तो at least the marketing folks are scared कि consumer इसके बारे में क्या सोचेगा, क्या बोलेगा social media में. So social media has given the consumer a voice, and it has given the consumer a voice in the healthcare marketing discussions as well, which honestly did not happen as strongly earlier. So we're very respectful to social media for that reason. In Medulla, we were always very respectful of the consumer, and therefore social media has been extremely amenable to us, and we've enjoyed working on social media. The other very interesting thing in digital media is that it allows you to take the consumer through the entire journey. If you remember the old-fashioned days of television advertising, in 20 seconds you had to go make a point, right? So basically you could either focus on awareness or creating a desire on the product, or actually generating the purchase of the product. And what social media and digital media do is they actually take you through the entire consumer journey in one go. And in healthcare, where this is a very high involvement category, the journey is extremely rational, is extremely detailed for the consumer. They want to do a lot of homework before making a decision. If you were doing a bypass surgery, you would want to be very sure about which doctor are you doing that surgery with, what do people think about that doctor, which hospital are you doing that in, what is the cost of that particular piece. That entire journey you need to be following. And digital advertising allows you to do that much better than anything else. The third most important advantage of digital and social media is that if the consumer likes your message, then the consumer will spread your message. You don't have to invest in media. That gives a lot of importance to the message. You focus on the message, the consumer likes it, he will viralize it, he will make it organic, and that's very important for healthcare. A big growth area for us is to play a big role in healthcare advertising across the world, and not just in India. We've recently started doing some of the biggest campaigns across the world. Recently we had a US TV commercial that we launched for Mylan that we're extremely proud of, and that played a role in talking about access and affordability of medicines, which is basically a conversation between the generic pharmaceutical industry and the innovative pharmaceutical industry. And we've actually played a role in that conversation in the US market. And I hope in the future we can play more such roles. Thank you.